Long before the world would hear tales of unimaginable wealth and legendary journeys, a powerful empire was already rising in the heart of West Africa. This was the Great Mali Empire, a land of vast savannas, busy trade routes, and cities filled with scholars, merchants, and travelers. At the center of this growing power would emerge a man whose name would echo across continents, Musa. But before he became the richest ruler the world had ever known, Musa was simply a prince in a powerful royal family. The Mali Empire itself had already begun to grow under the leadership of the legendary founder Sundiata Keita. Sundiata had united the Mandinka people and built an empire that controlled the most valuable trade routes in West Africa. Gold from the forests and salt from the Sahara Desert flowed through Mali's markets, making the kingdom stronger and richer every year. Musa was born into this world of opportunity and power. From a young age, he was taught the responsibilities of leadership. He learned about trade, governance, diplomacy, and the traditions of his people. But what made Musa different from many other princes was his deep curiosity about the world beyond Mali's borders. He listened carefully to traveling merchants who arrived from distant lands. They spoke of cities across the desert, powerful kingdoms, and the holy city of Mecca. Fate would soon place Musa on the throne in an unexpected way. The ruler of Mali at the time, Abu Bakr II, became fascinated with the mysteries of the Atlantic Ocean, according to historical accounts. He organized a massive expedition to explore what lay beyond the western horizon. Determined to discover new lands, Abu Bakr left the empire behind and sailed with thousands of ships. But he never returned. With the throne suddenly empty, the responsibility of ruling Mali fell to Musa. What began as an unexpected rise to power would soon transform into one of the most remarkable reigns in history. When Musa became emperor, he inherited a wealthy kingdom, but he dreamed of making it even greater. Under his leadership, Mali's influence expanded across West Africa. Trade flourished. Cities grew larger, and the empire's fame spread across the Sahara and into the Middle East. Merchants traveling through Mali began carrying stories of a powerful new ruler. They spoke of endless gold mines, thriving markets, and a king whose wealth seemed almost beyond imagination. But the world had not yet seen the true scale of Musa's power. That moment would come with a journey so legendary that it would shake economies, amaze kings, and forever secure his place in history. As the rule of Musa began to strengthen, the Mali Empire entered a new era of prosperity. The lands under his control stretched across vast regions of West Africa, covering fertile fields, powerful cities, and most importantly, the richest gold mines known in the medieval world. Gold was the lifeblood of Mali. At the time, gold was one of the most valuable resources on Earth. Kings, merchants, and empires across North Africa, Europe, and the Middle East depended on it for coins, trade, and wealth. And a large portion of the world's gold supply came from one place, the lands controlled by Mali. Caravans of traders crossed the endless sands of the Sahara Desert, traveling for weeks through dangerous heat and shifting dunes. These massive caravans carried salt from the desert mines in the north and exchanged it for gold in the southern regions of the empire. Salt was just as valuable as gold in many places because it preserved food and sustained life in the harsh climate. Cities within the empire quickly became powerful centers of trade and culture. One of the most famous was the legendary city of Timbuktu. Located along important trade routes near the Great Niger River, Timbuktu became a meeting point for merchants, scholars, and travelers from across the world. Markets were filled with merchants selling fabrics, spices, books, and precious metals. Scholars gathered in schools and mosques to study religion, science, mathematics, and law. The city slowly grew into one of the greatest intellectual centers of its time. Under Musa's leadership, Mali controlled the flow of gold entering global trade. This made the emperor incredibly powerful. It was said that the king possessed so much gold that no one could truly measure his wealth. But Musa was not only interested in riches. He believed that wealth should strengthen his empire and improve the lives of his people. Roads and trade routes were protected. Cities were expanded and religious institutions were supported. His rule brought stability to the kingdom, allowing trade and learning to flourish. News of this powerful and wealthy empire began spreading far beyond West Africa. Traders who passed through Mali carried incredible stories to distant lands. They spoke of a king whose treasury overflowed with gold and whose empire controlled some of the richest lands on earth. Soon, curiosity about Mansa Musa began growing across other kingdoms. People wondered if these stories could possibly be true, but the world was about to witness something even more astonishing. Mansa Musa was preparing for a journey that would make his name legendary across continents, a journey that would reveal the unimaginable wealth of Mali to the entire world. By the early 1300s, the fame of Mansa Musa had begun to spread across West Africa. His empire was powerful, his cities were thriving, and Mali's gold flowed to the trade routes of Sahara. But Musa was not satisfied with ruling a wealthy kingdom alone. As a devoted Muslim, he felt a deep responsibility to complete one of the most sacred duties of his faith, the pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. This sacred journey, known as the Hajj, was expected of every Muslim who had the ability to make the trip. For many people, the pilgrimage was difficult and dangerous, requiring months of travel across deserts and unfamiliar lands. But when Mansa Musa prepared for the journey, the world would soon realize that this was no ordinary pilgrimage. In the year 1324, the emperor began his historic journey from the Mali Empire toward the east. The caravan he assembled was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Thousands of people joined the expedition. Soldiers marched alongside servants, officials, and scholars. According to many historical accounts, the caravan included around 60,000 people traveling together across the Sahara Desert. And then there was the gold. Hundreds of camels walked slowly through the desert sands, each carrying heavy loads of pure gold. Some records say every camel carried nearly 300 pounds of the precious metal. In addition, hundreds of servants walked beside the emperor, each holding golden staffs that shined under the burning desert sun. Everywhere the caravan passed, people stopped in amazement. Villagers, traders, and travelers had never witnessed such a display of wealth and power. The journey itself became a moving symbol of Mali's incredible riches. As the massive caravan crossed the desert, it stopped at several important cities along the way. One of the most famous stops was in the great city of Cairo. At the time, Cairo was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the Islamic world. Merchants from across Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean gathered in its markets. When Mansa Musa arrived, the city was stunned. The emperor generously distributed gold throughout the city. He gave gifts to the poor, donated to religious leaders, and spent enormous amounts of gold in the markets. His generosity became legendary, but there was one unexpected consequence. So much gold entered the economy of Cairo that its value actually dropped. Prices changed, markets shifted, and the effects of Musa's spending were felt for years. Word of this astonishing king quickly spread across the Islamic world and into Europe. Stories of the ruler from Mali with limitless gold began appearing in maps, books, and conversations among scholars and merchants. Yet, the journey was not only about wealth. For Mansa Musa, the pilgrimage was also about faith, knowledge, and strengthening his empire's connection to the wider world. And when he finally reached the sacred city of Mecca, his life and the future of Mali would be changed forever. News of the emperor from West Africa spread quickly through trade routes, traveling across deserts, seas, and continents. Merchants carried stories to North Africa and the Middle East. Scholars wrote about the powerful king whose kingdom produced endless gold. Soon, even European mapmakers began drawing Mali on their maps. One of the most famous examples appeared years later in the Catalan Atlas, a medieval map created in Europe. On the map, Mansa Musa was shown sitting proudly on a throne, holding a large piece of gold in his hand, a symbol of the unimaginable riches of his empire. For many people in distant lands, Mali suddenly became a place of mystery and wonder. They wondered where all the gold came from. They wondered how powerful this African empire truly was. But Mansa Musa's journey was not only about showing the world his wealth. Along the way, he had also met scholars, architects, and teachers from many parts of the Islamic world. Inspired by what he had seen during his travels, Musa began thinking about how he could transform his empire into a center of knowledge and learning. When the emperor finally returned home, he did not return alone. He brought with him architects, scholars, and new ideas that would help reshape the future of Mali. Among those who joined him was the famous architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, who helped design magnificent buildings within the empire. The emperor's journey had shown the world the wealth of Mali, but what he planned to build next would prove that Mali was not only rich in gold, it was rich in culture, education, and greatness. And in the years that followed, the legendary city of Timbuktu would rise as one of the greatest centers of learning in the world. When Musa finally returned to his empire after his legendary pilgrimage, the world already knew his name. From the markets of North Africa to the courts of distant kingdoms, stories about the emperor who carried mountains of gold across the desert had spread far and wide. But Musa's greatest achievements were still ahead. The journey to Mecca had inspired him deeply. He had seen magnificent mosques, great libraries, and cities where scholars gathered to study religion, science, mathematics, and philosophy. Musa realized that wealth alone could not define a great empire. Knowledge, culture, and learning were just as powerful. Determined to transform Mali into a center of scholarship, Musa began investing his enormous wealth into building institutions of learning. One of the cities that benefited the most from his vision was the legendary trading center of Timbuktu. Under Musa's rule, Timbuktu grew into one of the most famous cities in Africa. Beautiful mosques were constructed, including those designed by the Andalusian architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, who Musa had met during his travels. These structures were not only places of worship, but also centers of education and intellectual discussion. Scholars began traveling from across the Islamic world to study in Timbuktu. The city became home to thousands of students who gathered in its famous institutions, including the renowned Sankore University. Here, students studied subjects ranging from Islamic law and theology to astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and literature. Libraries filled with handwritten manuscripts appeared throughout the city. Some historians believe that Timbuktu eventually held tens of thousands of books, an incredible achievement during a time when books were rare and precious. The Mali Empire itself continued to flourish. Trade routes remained active, connecting West Africa to North Africa and beyond. Gold, salt, ivory, and textiles flowed to the empire's markets, strengthening its economy and influence. But perhaps the greatest legacy of Musa was how he changed the way the world viewed Africa. Before his reign, many distant regions knew little about the powerful kingdoms of West Africa. After his famous pilgrimage and the stories of his empire spread across continents, the world began to recognize Mali as one of the most remarkable civilizations of its time. Even centuries later, historians still speak about Musa as one of the richest individuals who ever lived. But his true legacy was not simply gold. It was the thriving cities, the flourishing scholarship, and the powerful empire that stood as proof that greatness can be built not only with wealth,